Hello everybody, welcome to this week's live stream. Lots to talk about this week. S&P at fresh all-time highs. I feel like I've said that a few times over the years of doing live streams, and here we are again. I must admit, I didn't see that coming. If you'd have asked me 2 weeks ago, I wouldn't have thought we'd have been at all-time highs so quickly on the S&P. So we'll take a look at that in a bit more detail. Dollar has taken a bit of a nosedive this week. Bank of Japan raised interest rates overnight. We'll take a look at that as well. What else? Oil got a bit of a slight kicking yesterday. I think Mr. Trump said, President Trump, I should say, said that OPEC needs to lower oil prices. I think he also said that the Fed needs to lower interest rates. So there we go. Maybe he should run the Fed and run OPEC. That'd be a lot easier. One point of contact. So it's been an interesting week. Lots of volatility. So as usual, what we do on these, if you've never attended them before, we'll take a look at some of the major announcements coming out next week. There's a lot next week. There's a big one in particular next week. Then we'll look at the markets, the usual mix, indices, bit of FX, gold, oil, some other stuff, Bitcoin. And then if there's any stuff you want looking at, if you put it in this live chat on YouTube, we'll have a look at those as well. Okay, that's it. Let's get into it. Let's just do, what's happened with my slides now? Okay, let's just do a risk warning. This presentation is only for educational purposes. This presentation does not contain and should not be construed as containing investment advice or an investment recommendation or an offer of or solicitation for a transaction in any financial instrument. David Jones accepts no responsibility for any use that may be made of these comments and for any consequences that result. You should consider whether you understand how spread bets, CFDs, contract for difference, futures, foreign exchange work, and whether you can afford to take the high risk of losing your money. Trading is risky. Okay, so next week, Wednesday's the big one, but first of all on Wednesday, it's Aussie inflation, so Australia's consumer price index thing. What does inflation look like in Australia? There's the US interest rate decision and the press conference Wednesday night. That would be a big one, I think. You know, I think we all know interest rates, particularly US interest rates, are still a big topic for markets because of how it all ties in with inflation and what that means for the US economy and all of that stuff. So that's Wednesday night. That'll be a big one. Then Thursday, we've got EU and US GDP. So how well or not are those areas doing in terms of their economy? And then on Friday, it's US personal consumer expenditure data, which is the US Federal Reserve, the central bank's preferred inflation measure. So it's, it says definitely focus on the US next week for me. And it's the interest rate on Wednesday and that Friday data as well. And of course, I'll be here doing the live stream on Friday. So we'll see how what the markets have made of all of that. Okay, that's that. So that's the major stuff as I see it next week. So let's get into the market. So as usual, if there's any stuff you want looking at, pop it in the chat. But let's start with the US markets. I mean, I like trading the S&P. I haven't traded, I think I've done maybe one trade this month on the S&P because I got really a bit ground down by all of this sidewaysy sort of nonsense after the surge from November, the election in November. So I wasn't really convinced this latest rally was actually going to continue rallying. And of course it did. You know, this is the hourlies on the S&P. And we hit all-time highs again in the S&P this week, the S&P 500 index. So that's that. The trend continues. So the latest leg of the trend we're in the S&P runs from October 23. So we're however many months, 15, 16 months into that. What else can you say? It goes up, doesn't it? So I'll be buying the dips is what I would be doing on the S&P. I think for me still, what would be interesting would be if we got a deeper dip. The markets were shut on Monday because it was Martin Luther King Day this week and President Trump's inauguration. So Tuesday for me was sort of the benchmarky day for the week, and it did sell off. I think did it sell off below Friday's low? and then it's rallied since then. So for me, that 59.49-ish area on the S&P is an interesting one. But we are, quite some distance above that at the moment, 160 points above that at the moment, or 60 points. No, 160 points, isn't it? Yeah, I can't do the maths. 160 points above that at the moment. So interesting if we see the S&P under a bit of pressure next week. But what can you say? The trend is up, isn't it? Who am I to argue with the trend of the world's most important stock market index? No, I'm not going to call it top. So for me, I would be a buyer of the dip of the S&P. I haven't been on this rally this week because I wasn't that convinced, and I felt a bit out of step after the last sort of couple of weeks with markets, so I haven't done it. I've still got my S&P ETFs as my investments, but from a short-term trading point of view, I missed that rally this week. So let's see what happens next week. Nasdaq isn't quite there yet in terms of all-time highs, so that could, if somebody wanted to come up with an argument of why this S&P rally is not that convincing just yet, you could say, all right, the S&P's up, but the Nasdaq is still about 200-300 points below its all-time high set in early December, mid-December. So, but again, that has moved up this week. So interesting to see next week. Do we see the Nasdaq break out to fresh all-time highs, or do we see everything give up some of the gains? Let's see. Let's see what happens. But again, it's been a big week for the Nasdaq, or a big 10 days, not 10 days, 7 days, 8 days or so for the Nasdaq. Well, actually, that goes back to Monday, 13th of Jan. So a week last Monday, it's gone from 20,500 to 21.8, nearly 21.9. So that has been a big move. That is a big move, isn't it? What is that? It's like 7% move, 6% move in the Nasdaq since a week last Monday. So yeah, big move there. There we go. Trend still up. Hasn't quite taken out the highs. Let's see what next week brings. And the same with the Dow. The Dow, the all-time high for the Dow is in, again, early December. It's about, 500 points or so below that at the moment. Interesting next week to see, does this thing start to move out near the all-time high, or do we see perhaps US markets pause? I don't know, but again, I always talk about this trend, the trends in stock markets, I think I said in something, a webinar I did the other week, that the best decision I made last year was to sit on my S&P and Nasdaq positions, because the trends are up, so to do nothing, so for me, those trends are still up. Let's see how it all looks next week. So not too much to say about that. I would like to have a sell-off because I don't like chasing the markets. I want to buy the dip, but we've had, nothing in the ways of dips this week. So there we are. That's that. Very interesting, I think. And the Russell, the smaller cap US, that is, a bit of a lagger compared to the big stuff. But the trend has been up since October 2023. But again, it's still some way below its all-time high. It's actually about 10% away. Maybe not quite 10%. 7% away from the all-time high. So that's that. Blah, blah, blah. US markets, S&P all-time highs. The other ones, not quite yet. Let's see what next week brings. FTSE, amazingly, I think this happened last week. The FTSE, the most boring stock market index in the world, usually, broke out to fresh all-time highs a week ago. So this time last week, FTSE all-time highs. Hasn't done a lot since then. What a surprise. But here we are. The FTSE. I don't trade the FTSE that often because it is a lot of sideways. If you look at last year, sideways from May until now. But that's interesting. Perhaps the FTSE is going to surprise me this year, and the FTSE ends up being a top performer for the year. Let's see. I'm not convinced, but broke out to fresh all-time highs. That is a positive sign. What has been really impressive is the DAX, German market. DAX, again, of course, the trend in the DAX has been up. The DAX broke out on the 15th of Jan, Wednesday the 15th, so that was a week last Wednesday. And it's gained 20,500 was the break point. It's gained 1,000 points since then, and has barely looked back. In all honesty, looking at the daily charts, So there we are. DAX again. I would like to buy a breakout. So I've been sidelined through all of this because I don't really buy into runaway markets, into the first breakout, rightly or wrongly over the last week. But there you go. But interesting next week if we get a bit more of a pullback. Let's see. Let's see what happens. The Italians, that sort of paused a bit over the last week, isn't it? Japan is still a bit sideways. Maybe that's breaking out next week. Maybe. We had the Bank of Japan, of course, raise interest rates overnight. Was it a 17-year high? Was that right? Am I right on that? I can't remember. But they raised rates overnight. Let's see what the Japanese market does next week. So lots going on in stock markets. European markets positive, S&P positive. I'd like to see a dip. We're not having them yet. Let's see what next week brings. So lots to watch there. What else should we talk about? What's the next thing we'll have a look at? Let's have a look at the dollar index. So I was long this. I got stopped out overnight on that move. Because of I think the Bank of Japan raising rates, or it was a bit drifty anyway, to be honest. I would like to buy the dollar index next week because we have had this trend since October. I don't think that trend's over. Who knows? Let's see what happens next week. So for me, that is one to watch next week. Of course, if you thought, well, this is the top of the dollar, then go short. It's broken out that uptrend. It's broken below the lows from 20th of December. I am still leaning to be a buyer next week. I think if this thing stabilizes a bit, it might be an interesting one next week. Let's see what happens. But yeah, I mean, it's dropped. It's on 1 month lows at the moment, the dollar index. So as a losing trade for me this week. Let's see what next week brings. And sticking, let's have a look at a few other currencies. Pound against the dollar, because we've had this dollar weakness, we have seen a tentative recovery, I would call it, a bit stronger the last 24 hours. But in the pound against the dollar, it was all doom and gloom for the UK about 2 weeks ago with gilt yields up and the pound plummeting and blah, blah, blah. And I did say at the time, maybe not in here, but maybe in the WhatsApp group, there was so much negative news in the UK press. And very often, by the time a big trend, either up or down, is making sort of front page headlines, that's the time you start to think, oh, is this trend running out of steam now? And that's what we've seen. They were so negative about the state of the UK, the pound and the gilts, and it has marked a temporary bottom, at least for the pound. If you look on the dailies, I think I would have picked these up as big levels anyway. So it's a quite dramatic fall for the pound since September, and lots of other things against the dollar. It's turned round. Has it turned round for good? Who knows? Interesting market next week. The trend is still up. Let's see. Do we see this pound rally start to stall next week? I think that's an interesting one to watch, as is the euro. So euro dollar hit what did it hit today? It traded to its best levels since about the 18th of December. So again, is this a turnaround for the euro? Is it a dead cat bounce and the euro goes plop again, back down? I don't know. I've said I think there's going to be a dollar comeback next week. So by definition, I think the pound and the euro will come under some pressure once more next week. But let's see. Let's see what happens. As usual, just take it day by day. They're strong today. I'm not doing anything at all today, actually, I don't think. So let's see what next week brings. So there's a lot to watch next week. Sterling yen, to mention that, I am in the sterling yen trade. It's done well now. It's quite the slow burner. So in my own trading account, I'm in the sterling yen trade. In this YouTube account, there's a sterling yen trade as well. I think that was from a video I did on the 15th. Where is it? I bought it in there, 15th of Jan. So whatever video I did on the 15th of Jan, I did a sterling yen trade, and I'm in it for my own account as well. And that's done all right. I bought them in my own account at 191. And it's at 194.5. So it's up about 350 points. I had a wide stop on it, so it's got to move a bit further. But let's see. But that's a good end to the week so far with that open position. So lots to watch in currencies, I think, with this, because the dollar's under pressure because, of course, Mr. Trump was talking about his tariffs thing as well, and all of this, and suggesting that maybe the Fed wants to drop interest rates, So, there's quite a bit of turmoil for the dollar this week, and there's that Fed interest rate decision next week. So FX very much in focus, I think. And like I say, I am expecting a dollar comeback. It's not happening today, but it could be interesting next week. So that's that. A lot going on in FX. Let's talk about gold and silver. Gold's done really well. I mean, gold is almost back to the all-time high. So the all-time high was 27.90. So gold's about $12 away from the all-time high. That is the all-time high, isn't it? Yeah. There we go. Great trend in gold since, I suppose if we pick it off here, 6th of Jan. So gold's up about $150 since the 6th of Jan. Yeah, it's a big old move, isn't it? It's a 7%, 6-7% move. Another interesting one to watch next week. What happens up at these old highs? Are we going to see gold break out again and we start the next leg higher to wherever gold goes next? But I think that's an interesting one to watch next week. Or does it run out of steam? You know, for those of you who are fans of the old RSIs, the squiggles, you know, it's pretty overbought. This is the most overbought gold has been since pretty much just before the last all-time high. So it did push a bit higher last time round. Let's see what happens up here. And of course, the dollar has an impact here, you know. So, but it's interesting that even though the dollar was stronger earlier this year, gold was still going up, you know. So that does suggest to me there is absolutely some nerves still out there amongst investors that's helping gold stay a bit buoyant and keep perhaps its safe haven status. Let's see. Interesting week next week. Silver, not got much to say about that really, to be honest. Silver's a bit of a funny old market, but the trend is up, you know, from last year it's broadly up, isn't it? But not too exciting for me. I haven't got a lot to say about silver. Bitcoin, I thought, because I'm not quite sure what was signed yesterday about crypto. Did they sign something that says there'll be no central bank digital currency or something like that? I couldn't quite. I was trying to follow it on Twitter, which is perhaps not the most sensible place to follow it. Here we go. Trump orders crypto working group to draft new regulations and explore a national crypto stockpile, right? Whatever that means. I thought when I read that news, I thought, well, that's surely got to be good for crypto, but it hasn't moved to all-time highs. Anyway, so there's obviously a bit of crypto in the news. It's not far off all-time highs, I suppose, is it? But it was a bit volatile, I think, yesterday. I don't know. You know, the trend is still up. It made all-time highs just the beginning of this week, actually, Bitcoin. So again, I'd have to be a buyer. Where would my stop go? If I was buying it off the daily chart, definitely the other side of 90,000 for Bitcoin. If I was trading the hourlies and think, oh, we're going to get a breakout again, probably the other side of 97 or something like that. So yeah, but obviously the trend is still up, all the usual. Let's see. I do wonder if it's all a bit exhausted now, though. You know, so on the one hand, the trend is still up, but I mean, it's had a big old move, hasn't it? Not to say it can't have another big move, but let's see. Let's see what next week brings. Does crypto go through 110? If it goes through 110, do we see all the FOMO buyers, the fear of missing out buyers all pile in, and off we go, and it's £250,000 by Easter? Who knows? Or dollars by Easter. Let's see. Let's see what happens. But yeah, so I'll be watching those previous all-time highs on Bitcoin next week. So that's that. Oil, I think, is interesting. I've been waiting very patiently to buy oil. I did a good trade on oil beginning of the month. I forgot about that. So I did good trade on oil. I think I bought it in here at 73 and I came out about 79 or something. And then I was waiting because I was following that trend. So I was waiting to get back in again. But it's carried on going down and it got clobbered yesterday because it's that man again, Mr. Trump, said that OPEC should lower oil prices. So we got clobbered yesterday. It was 4 o'clock yesterday. There's the move in oil yesterday at 4 o'clock. So it went from 70, nearly 77, down to below 75.5. I still feel there is a buying opportunity in oil, but I'm not allowed to buy it yet because this trend is still down. So I'd like to see a bit of strength in oil early next week, and then I would think about being a buyer. So I think it's interesting in this time frame because we've absolutely got two trends going on. On the dailies, though, it's still a bit boring. You know, if you look at the last 12 months in oil, it looks like that. You know, so let's see. If I'm a buyer next week, then my stop is going below this 73 level from 9th of Jan. So I think that's so there's loads to watch next week. There's not so much for me to do today, but there's a lot to watch next week. So that's oil, still weak, but I'm wondering if we get a bounce next week. Natural gas. I mean, if I had to do a trade in anything today, It probably would be natural gas. Again, it's all been a bit sideways this year, but the trend in natural gas has been up since the beginning of November. So we're almost 3 months into that trend. 355 has been support. It's on the trend line. It gapped lower the beginning of this week, faffed around, filled the gap yesterday, sold off a bit. So I think, I wonder if that's a buy. And if you look, for me on the dailies, it was quite a bullish move on the daily charts on natural gas end of last year, that it finally broke out of this sideways range that it had been in for most of last year. So I think that's an interesting market. I mean, natural gas, the usual disclaimer, is an absolute lunatic market at the best of times. But let's see. I think that's interesting next week. See what happens there. What else looks interesting that we can dip into? Just a couple of things that I mentioned. I think I've mentioned during the week in WhatsApp group. Sugar, US sugar. I think that's interesting. US sugar had been in a big downtrend, November 23 to August 24. Breaks out. If I was looking at that back then, I would absolutely think, well, that's that downtrend over, isn't it? And what's happened since then? So that was September time. What's happened is sugar has gone all the way back to the lows from August. Bang. And we've had the bounce. So for me, that's an interesting market. Is this the retest? And off we go up again in sugar. So in terms of risk reward, I think it's an interesting trade down here. If it breaks that $17.50 or $17, it's quite a big break. So I think that's interesting. Another interesting one for next week, US sugar. So maybe a longer term trade for me. What's cattle doing? Oh, I'd never bought those. Stupid man. All-time highs again on the cows. So yeah, again, breakout. That was an interesting market. Kevin, who I think is here, mentioned it in the WhatsApp group just as it was breaking out. But sideways all last year, couldn't get through 188, 189, breaks out, bang, 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 and here we are up at all-time highs for the cows. So interesting. Should have bought that, didn't buy it, never mind. So that's that. Corn was an interesting market. So a lot of these, when these commodities start moving, I remember thinking all of this before inflation became an issue, whenever it was. When was it? Was it 2021? Something like that? Or maybe 2022, I can't remember. But 2022 maybe. The commodities, like 6 months before inflation started going nuts, not all the commodities, but lots of them were showing real strength. And I remember thinking at the time, oh, well, surely this could be a bit of an issue a bit further down the line. And we are seeing, I think, this in a few markets now, where the price of raw materials, food and stuff, has been going up. Look at corn. I mean, talking about corn, the price of corn has been sliding since April 2022. And we've had this run. It's moved 30% up since August. We're on the downtrend line. Are we going to see a breakout for corn? Are we going to see the start of a new trend in corn higher? Let's see. But, lots of interesting things in different time frames across a whole range of markets. So that's another one for me next week to keep an eye on, see what happens with that. So really, there is an awful lot, I think, to watch next week. There's that US interest rate decision, see what happens with that. S&P, what's that doing? Is that out to all-time highs again? Here we go. Even as we speak, history is being made in the S&P 500. So all-time highs again for the S&P. Let's see what happens next week with the US market. So loads to watch. I have done some US stocks this week. I'll have a quick look at those. There's the trades. Here's the trading account. This is real money. This is the YouTube trading account. I saw Nick mention Oracle. Did Oracle last week. That's done really well, hasn't it? So bought Oracle on the live stream last week at 162. They're 185 today. PayPal, not doing much. Sterling yen, that's doing all right. And JD, whatever that was from ages ago. When did I do that trade? In here somewhere. 6th of December. Okay, so that's slightly in profit. It's doing all right. So the older YouTube trading account's doing all right. But that Oracle trade has been a cracker. I've actually already moved the stop on that, on Oracle, because it's done all right. I think the risk was about 100 quid. But that's doing all right. The old YouTube account showing a bit of profit. Up 11% for the year so far. Happy days. Just do that every month and I won't be here in 2 years' time. If only you could do 11% every month. How great would life be? Yeah, that's good. So that's that. So I've got a few. I started doing US stocks again. That's one from last year, December, I think. Visa. So I'm in that. The trend has been up. Costco. Um, Bought that. That's done. That's done okay. That's slightly in profit. Aristonet was one I did earlier in January, and I had a bit of a lucky break on that. Well, that's jumped higher again today. Bit of a lucky break on that. That's gapped higher, and I did these yesterday. Capital One Financial. So I've got a few. I have done a few trades, or one longer term trade this week, even though I've missed out on this S&P move so far. I've still got a few bits on. So it's interesting times again after what did feel like, I think in December, after that initial surge in November after the US election, everything did feel a bit just hard work. Things have definitely livened up again the next couple of weeks. So yeah, I think there's a lot to watch next week. So let's see. So what we'll do now, if there's any stuff you want looking at, whack it in the chat. There will of course be a very quick commercial break from me. So I run this WhatsApp group that I update every morning with a whole load of interesting markets to look at, any trades I'm running, anything like that. Then I do an update in the afternoon on US stocks, or US stock market at least. I try and do a webinar every month. We did a webinar on the 16th of January, so week last Thursday, talking about longer term trading. You know, I think too many people are far too short term when it comes to trading, and actually being longer term is better. The benefits of position trading, what to look for, managing risk, riding the trend, adding to positions, and how to start. So I did that webinar a week last Thursday. It's only for people in the WhatsApp group, but if you join the WhatsApp group, you can have access. And you only need to join the WhatsApp group for a month, get updates from me, blah, blah, blah. The link is in the description. If you use the code YouTube, you get 20% off the first month, and you can try it out, and I'll give you access to that webinar, which is worth more than 1 month subscription to a WhatsApp group. Yeah, and if you disagree with me, I'm not going to give you a refund. You're just wrong. All right. So I'd say if you want access to that webinar, it's about 55 minutes long. You can join the WhatsApp group for a month. Most people stay in there. I think the average is about 8 months. So people are happy with it, which I'm happy about. It's good for me as well to have the discipline to sit down and write this stuff every day. Everybody wins. So if you'd like to see that webinar, join the WhatsApp group. To find out who I trade with, the link again is in the description. If you join through them, there's going to be various stuff I do for my clients who joined through them this year, blah, blah, blah. Go to bit.ly, David Trade. Okay, that is the commercial break out of the way. Let's get into the stuff. Let's have a look. What are we going to look at? AMAT, Applied Materials. I was in those, I think, last year. AMAT, from memory. Oh, they've all gone a bit boring, haven't they? That was a good trend last year. I don't know where I got in. I think it was early in the year. It's interesting that, isn't it? And then the trend has all gone a bit pear-shaped since July, hasn't it? So what would you do? I would probably still be inclined to be a buyer, but I wouldn't buy here. Because if I bought here, I would want my stop the other side of 160. So for me, I'd probably be a bit patient. You could absolutely make the argument, well, hang on a second, if we go back to July, isn't the trend down since July? And it is. You know, we've got lower highs and lower lows since July. So as is very often the case in markets, you can always make an argument to be a buyer or a seller. That's the whole reason markets exist, for buyers and sellers. So for me, there's the argument to be a seller as well. So if I was a seller, I'd have a stop above 215, 220, something like that. So for me at the moment, it's one of those that's I wouldn't do anything. So yeah, not much excitement for me there at the moment. Probably because of that long-term trend, I'd rather be a buyer, but I'd rather wait to see, does it go back to 161 or something like that. What was that question? QCOM. So look at those, Qualcomm. I would, it's a bit boring as well, isn't it? That's really gone off the boil as well, hasn't it? What would you do? What would you do? As a trend follower, what would you do? Well, do you know what? Not much. I'd probably sell it, you know. I wouldn't sell it today. I actually, you know, again, in all honesty, I always believe in being honest, I'd do nothing. I'd look at something else. It's got no interest to me at all. It's all a bit sideways since August. It's nudging near the top of the range. Go short, but no. If it drifts back to 150, it looks interesting. If it drifts up to 180, it looks like a sell. At the moment, it's just a bit blur, isn't it, I'd say. I thought Apple was interesting this week. To try and chuck in one of my own. I haven't done this yet. I mean, Apple, if you want to be... If I was looking for a pullback in Apple, Apple has dropped from 260 to 219. So they dropped, what's that, $40. And we got big support on Apple. I think it's Apple's earnings next week. So perhaps I'd rather wait till they were out of the way. Where's that? When's that? Yeah, next Thursday. Next Thursday? Yeah. So I think that's an interesting one. What was the other one? I can't even remember. But yeah, those two... Nothing really jumping out at me at the moment on those two. ADA, Cardano. Oh, we're not looking at cryptocurrencies, are we? Come on, we're better than that. I don't know. Remortgage the house and buy loads of them, or do nothing. I mean, it's always hard with this. It's tripled, hasn't it? Tripled in whatever it is. Like it tripled from November to December in a month, didn't it? And then it's gone sideways. So do you know what I mean? What does that even mean? It's a casino, isn't it? It's a roulette wheel, isn't it? You're going to be a buyer at one and see if they go higher. If I had to do anything, I would buy them. That's what I would do. So I'd buy them. But you know how I hate these funny money markets. I'd buy them and I'd want to stop below 75, 0.75. But I think it's difficult, isn't it? When you have these sudden moves like that, that's been crazy over the years, isn't it? Absolutely crazy. Bitcoin, I can absolutely apply technical analysis to Bitcoin. But when we have, markets, they're a bit like small cap stocks, isn't it? Some of the small caps we see now and again, where the market goes pow, and then goes. It's hard. I think it's hard to apply technical analysis to it. And I try and be a realist. I don't think charts are the be all and end all. But I do think in the more developed markets, look at me referring to Bitcoin as a developed market, they're perhaps a bit more suited to charting. And I think some of the more fringe markets, should we call them, perhaps it's harder. So yeah, it's fantastic if you've been in it. I would never have been in that because the thing was drifting lower. I think it's always a bit difficult for me when they're done like that. So yeah, not one for me. What's the other one? Is it Ether? What's Ethereum, isn't it? What's that thing doing? I've not read anything about that for a while. It's done nothing really, has it? What's going on with that then? It moved in November on the election. No, it did. It was up. It was up a chunk, 80%. Well, that is a big move, isn't it? But it's not done much again. What about the other one, XRP? Do these actually still exist? These markets? Oh, that's doing really well. That's doing really well, isn't it? Don't know why. But all right, there we go. That's me exhausted my knowledge of cryptocurrencies now. That's done fantastically well. Blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so yeah, not sure on that one, bit on the fence. DDOG, I remember that from last week. DDOG, Datadog. I think I said let's have a look at it, didn't I, this week? I would still be thinking about being a buyer, and I'd still be trying to be patient. We had a bit of a discussion about FOMO, fear of missing out, in the WhatsApp this morning. And I think this is one of those ones where I think, yeah, I really want to buy that, but I need to be a bit more patient. But absolutely, if I was a buyer today at 142, again, the problem is for me is where does my stop go? My stop goes at 121 or 120, let's say. So it's a big stop, but it's 15% away, isn't it? It's not that big if I'm expecting a big move, I suppose. But I wonder, is it still trying to edge a little bit lower? Is this correction or whatever we're going to call it still going on? I don't know. But yeah, the trend is absolutely up on Datadog. So I'd say I'd keep going back to it, and then we'll look at it one day and it'd be like $200 and I've missed the move. But I suppose, actually, no, let's think about it. Let's apply some pure charting stuff here. This was the old breakout level. So the old highs were 14th of Feb 24, around about there. So 138. So you actually, you could make an argument here. You could say, well, it's broken out through 138. We had the move up. This is the retest of the old breakout zone. So the aggressive trade here, let's do a trade. Should we do a trade? The aggressive trade here is to take the view, right, it's tested the old breakout zone and off we go again back to 170. So if I absolutely had to buy it today, I would want to stop at least the other side of 134. Let's see. Hang on, let's have a quick look. Let's do it. Should we do it? There we go. Look at that. Completely talked myself out say how bad the fear of missing out is, and then completely talk myself into a trade after a minute. So I'm going to take the view, all right, it's sold off. We've faffed around the old breakout zone, and we're going to go up again. So let's have a think about stop losses on this one. So 134. What were these lows? 120. Let's say 130. If the thing goes to 130, then my rationale that this is testing the old breakout zone is wrong. So I'm going to be there we go. So I'm going to buy them. Oh, my risk is a bit too much there. I don't want to risk that much money. 122 quid on this YouTube account. How much smaller can I trade? I think that's too small, isn't it? 0.1. 130. Price at 130. 10%. Oh, let's do it. Let's do it. I've had a good week on Oracle. That is not the attitude, but let's just do it for entertainment purposes for the YouTube video. Have I got enough margin though, actually? I don't know. Let's buy it. There we go. Did it. Don't care. I think that's interesting though, in all seriousness. I think that's, for me, that is an aggressive trade, but the thinking behind it, that's a valid way of looking at this to see what happens down here. So let's see what happens next week on that one. So Datadog is in the little portfolio of trades. There it is. Because of the spread, obviously I'm behind a bit because of the spread on Datadog. Let's see how that works out. Interesting one. We'll come back to it next week and see what happens. And PDD Holdings. What does that look like? That, I mean, you could absolutely be a buyer, couldn't you? I think that's a reasonable bit of speculation. To take the view that DDD Holdings. Oh, look at that! It's actually textbook on the trend. So for me, if I was a buyer there, we've had trend. This is going back to March 22. So we're 3 years into that trend. You could argue it's been a bit sideways, perhaps a bit messy since September 23. But we're down at these lows, 88 lows, $88 low. If it's going to rally from anywhere, then we're here. So yeah, I'd be a buyer of that. It's not as good for me. It's not as good a trade as something like, I don't know, like the Visa trade I'm in, which isn't going to come up, which has got a definite trend, but it's interesting from a coming back to the old support sort of thing, isn't it? So I sold my AXP in my SIP. So AXP is American Express. Great trend on AXP. Oh, a bit of a hit today, isn't it? Is that the earnings that have come out? We talked about last week. Barely met earnings in report this morning. Okay, what do you think about trading short? Well, I would not go short personally, but I wouldn't go short because it hit an all-time high yesterday. Yeah, so for me, by definition, if it hit an all-time high yesterday, the trend is up, so I should only look for buying opportunities. But as a trading short, like you say, well, the aggressive trade here, well, that has got hit, hasn't it? The aggressive trade, if you thought, well, actually, maybe next week, American Express comes under a bit of pressure, and if I had to go short, I'd go short now at $315, not $315 at the time, and put a stop above that 326 level from yesterday. Because by definition, it is quite interesting. It's not an approach I'd recommend, or not for me personally anyway, but if we think it's going to drop from here, then by definition it shouldn't take out yesterday's all-time high, should it? So yeah, the logic behind that, flies completely in the face of the trend, but from a risk point of view, you can see the logic in it. So let's see. Personally, as you know, I would be waiting to buy the dip because that is a cracker of a trend in that one. But yeah, if you thought, well, actually, has it got overinflated into earnings and we're due a bit of a cooling off? Because you could, I suppose, expanding that theory, if we thought this run, from 300 from last Tuesday into 326 was an expectation of good earnings, maybe the thing goes back to 300, at the very least. I don't know. It'd be interesting, that one, to see where it is in a week's time. So, there you go. Good luck, whatever you do. on that. Sterling yen finally on the move. Yes, finally. Yeah, that has been. I mean, I did that trade. The logic behind that trade was a sound one for me. As usual, I was too early. The thing I have learned over the years, I always get in far too early. So I need to give markets time to prove me right. I bought sterling yen more than a week ago in here somewhere, I think. And it went against me, 200 points against me. And now it's 300 points in my favour. Let's see what happens on that sterling yen next week. Let's see what happens. Sterling Aussie. Yeah, I think I mentioned sterling Aussie in the WhatsApp this morning because I thought, yeah, that trend on sterling against the Aussie dollar is up, you know. Going back a year, going back to 2024, the beginning of 2024. So again, I'd be if I had to do anything on sterling against the Australian dollar, I'd be a buyer. I'd probably want a bit of a wider stop though. That's the problem. An aggressive stop will be the other side of 196. But again, sterling against the Aussie dollar, the pound has been strong. You know, it hit a whatever it is, 4-year high in December, 4.5-year high against the Aussie. So yeah, still looks interesting to me on that. Last week's Oracle trade. Yeah, let's have a quick look at Oracle. So that had a bit of a... So bought those last week. No, that's PayPal. Bought Oracle last week. And I think that was just buying because the trend was up. Yeah, trend was up on Oracle. So bought those down here. It's had a blast on, I'm guessing on earnings. Can't see it, but whatever. And if I hadn't bought it, I don't know what I'd do with it now. I still buy it, but I wouldn't buy it now, if that makes sense. I'd be waiting to buy the dip. So that was quite fortunate. Fortunate or my incredible market timing? You decide. I'm going to go with fortunate. So, but again, you know, an obvious one because the trend was up. You know, I mentioned it this week. You know, if you trade with the big trends, surprises will often happen in your favour, like my trade in Aristonet at the moment. You know, I bought those about there. And again, it's pretty obvious because the trend is up. So in at 110. And they had a lovely, whatever it was this week, earnings. And the things moved like 18% in my favour. You know, so obviously you get surprises against trends. But a lot of the time, surprises will happen in the direction of trends. So, yeah, so an Oracle from last week is a good example of that. I don't think they don't work all the time, obviously. You know, I had that losing dollar index trade this week. So nothing works all the time, but I do think over the years you'll often get surprises happening in the direction of trends. Can we have a look at bbboxl. Oh my God, what's that? bbboxl.xc. bbboxl. If this is a cryptocurrency, I'm not going to be happy, right? bbboxl. Is that, what is it? bbboxl.xc. Oh, I'm a bit confused on that one. It's not coming up anywhere. Am I typing this one in? BBOXL. It's not this thing, is it? Whatever that thing is. Kraken. Oh my God. Let's skip that. Type that in again, Connor. If I've got something wrong, type it in again. I want to have a look at it. CRH. Is that the... are they the Irish company? Is it who I'm thinking of? They do... what do they do? It's really bugging me now. CRH London listing. What do they do? Building materials. That's it. Knew it. Right. CRH. So that's the London listing, isn't it? I think that's the London listing. I mean, I would, look at that trend again. Going back to what's been a bit of a theme for today. Trends. What a cracking trend in CRH. So you bought CRH back in. Well, I wouldn't buy them October 22. But let's say you bought them October 23 at, is that 44 euros? And here they are at 81. Happy days. So yeah, I'd be a buyer. I'd probably try and wait for a dip to be a buyer. The risk is I'd miss out if the thing didn't dip, blah, 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 blah. But yeah, I'd be a buyer. It just depends. Do I want to buy now or do I want to wait and see if there's a pullback? But what a cracking trend that has been over the last two and a bit years now. So yeah, if I was a buyer now, The closest I want my stop is probably 68 euros, I think, is where I would go on that. But I would, yeah, for me, the trend is up. So I'd be a buyer. Tritax Big Box, right? Tritax Big Box, the other one. Tritax. I remember this, I think. I think this does all right as well, doesn't it? Oh, maybe not. Oof. I think I remember it from these days when it was trending really well. Again, it's one of those ones, it's like, shall we try and call the bottom type thingy? You know, because it bottomed out in September 22 at 120. And it keeps hitting this level, doesn't it? And it's gone down again. So again, for me, it'd be a speculative bottom pick type buy with a stop at the other side of 120. That's what I would do with that one at the moment. And the other one you mentioned was CBGBs, the London listing. Oh, Close Brothers, is it a stockbroker or a bank or something like that, isn't it? I mean, I would, oh my God, no. So for me, the trend is down on that one. So yeah, so it wouldn't be one for me, you know, because the trend is absolutely down. And you might get, okay, I mean, clearly it's had a big move, isn't it? It's moved 50% in the great scheme of things. Oh, they're the ones involved with this whole car finance thing, aren't they? Where people are saying they weren't told, they weren't told about commission on car finance deals, and there's a whole, like the whole PPI scandal in the UK, isn't there? So that's it, isn't it? I think they're involved in that. I think provided some of the finance for that, whatever. But yeah, so I suppose if you thought, well, actually they've been beaten up too much, be a buyer. They have risen 50% in the last couple of weeks, week and a half. For me, the trend is down, so it's not one for me. But interesting to see where all that goes. I mean, God, that's horrible, isn't it? They were 16, 17 quid in 2021, and not even 4 years later, they're 3 quid. So they've dropped. What's that? 80% fall. And that's after a 50% bounce this week. Brutal. But yeah, not one for me, that one. But there we go. That's that. Can you have a look at the German 40? You think it's bearish now after all-time highs? Okay. Well, I would say, for me, I wouldn't be bearish. But again, I suppose it's a bit like Kevin's American Express thing. You know, if you thought that the DAX, this is the German DAX, if you thought that's overshot to the upside, go short with a stop above 21.5, 21.5. The problem is, though, you see, this is, I mean, I used to do a lot of this in the early days, which is why I lost money for years in the beginning. I'd always go against big trends. But I would say, you know, you could have thought that a couple of days ago, and the market's gone up 200 points since then. So for me, I want to go with the trend. So I want to buy the dip in the DAX. And again, I'm only saying this is right for me. I'm not saying this is how everyone should do it. But for me, you know, a big reason people lose money is they go against big trends. And absolutely for me, the trend in the DAX is very much up. But, you know, who knows? Maybe it is a bit overheated. Look at the RSI. It's definitely overcooked on the RSI. Let's see what happens. Good luck with it. But I am a buyer of the dip on the DAX. That's what I'm doing. Abat. What's Abat? Is it Abat or Sabat? American Battery Technology. How much they're electric? Oh my God, look at that. That's another one for me. I mean, that is another roulette stock, isn't it? Oh, look at that over the years. Amazing. It's from $70 in Jan 2021 to $1.53 today. Wow. What's that? It's a 98% fall, isn't it? Is it 98%? Am my maths right? Yeah, pretty much. 98% fall. So for me, I mean, that's another, you know, lottery ticket stock, isn't it? You buy it, you don't look at it for 5 years and hope Tesla takes them over or something. Who knows? But I mean, an absolutely crazy run there from $1 to $4 and all the way back to $1.50. I wonder what the story was behind that. Yeah. So yeah, not too crazy for me, that stock. But interesting. It's always interesting to see some of these absolute lunatic moves, isn't it? In some of these stocks over the years. What's Coinbase doing at the moment? That should be doing okay, shouldn't it? Oh yeah, it's going up. But yeah, so yeah, interesting stock. Not one thing. Do you think Meta could hit 660 next week? Let's have a look at Meta. It's possible, isn't it? It's only a $20 move, isn't it? So a $20 move in Meta, and to be honest, it moved pretty much $20 yesterday. What did it do yesterday? It was 621 to 636, moved $15 yesterday. So do you think Meta could hit 660 next week after its earnings? Or is the trend exhausted already? I would not say the trend is exhausted. It's hitting all-time highs today. So for me, I am a buyer of Meta. Again, the only question is, where does my stop go? And I would say at the very closest, my stop would go under 580. So arguably a bit further than that. I'd use a dip as an opportunity to buy. And that's it. That's it, really. So yeah, interesting. So they've got earnings next week. When are they? Wednesday. So is it Thursday is Apple and Wednesday's what's it? Meta, the old Facebook. Interesting one. But again, absolutely. Would you like to guess at the trend in Meta? I think it's pretty clear, isn't it? So for me, I'd like to be a buyer of Meta on the dip or on the strength. But yeah, that'd be interesting next week, then, won't it? What's your opinion on Netflix and Meta? We just did Meta, did that one. Let's look at Netflix. I mean, Netflix had a move this week, didn't they? Oh, look at that. I'd be a buyer of Netflix. I was in those last year. I got taken out in August, on that sell-off in August. But again, what's the trend on Netflix? I'd be a buyer. Where would my stop go? At the moment, I would still want to stop below $800. So I'd rather have a sell-off on Netflix and a bit of stability, and then jump on board and see what happens next. But yeah, I mean, again, that is all-time highs. It shows you the strength of these moves to all-time highs. Netflix moved to all-time highs in September through $700. It's at $974 now. It's a heck of a move, isn't it? So it's put on $270 in September, which is pretty much almost a 40% move. 40% move in Netflix in September. Crazy. So yeah, but the trend is up and good, whatever it was they did. What did they do this week? Was it earnings or something? Did they add like a gazillion subscribers? So yeah, it must have been their outlook or something. But interesting moves, yeah. But I'd rather buy the dip in Meta at the moment. Oracle gapped up because of the news of Mr. Trump saying US government will start running a new project called Stargate, which will be partnershiped with Oracle and will be invested $500 billion to improve AI. Okay, thank you very much for that. Right. Nikkei is going mental again. Let's have a look at the Nikkei. What's that doing? Nikkei. I wonder what's going on. It's breaking out. It's breaking out. It's the out of hours, isn't it? It's almost like a delayed reaction to the interest rate decision. That is quite big moves, isn't it? In the out of hours. When does it shut, the Nikkei? I never know. When's the official shut? Let's say it's in here somewhere. 40,000. So it's done like 400, 500 points since the close. Interesting. So yeah, I guess there must be an element, I suppose, of following the S&P. Oh, the S&P's coming back now. Anyway, let's see. So that's it. I think we looked at lots of interesting shares today, haven't we? Lots of interesting markets today. So there's a lot to watch next week. I'm actually finishing about now. I'm going for an early beer tonight, which isn't well deserved because I've not done a lot of work this week, but I'm knocking it on the head, I think, for today. So I won't be doing anything later today. But I think there's an awful lot to watch next week. US stock markets, S&P at all-time highs, NASDAQ and the Dow, not quite. What happens next week with those? Dollar index, I'm expecting the bounce next week. Not happening today, but I think that's interesting for a bounce next week. Gold is nudging ever closer to those all-time highs, $7 away at the moment. Bitcoin, is the crypto mania a bit exhausted at the moment? Or are we going to see 110 taken off and away we go again next week? Oil, I'm expecting the bounce next week in oil, but then again, I was expecting it this week and it hasn't happened. Natural gas, the trend is up, but it's a crazy market. So let's see what happens. Sterling yen trade is doing all right. So yeah, there's a whole bucket load of stuff, I think, to watch next week. And of course, if you're in the WhatsApp group, you get these updates every day and you get access to that webinar, and it only costs you 40 quid for the month if you use the code YouTube. So it's not even the price of a cup of coffee a day. You can't buy a £2 cup of coffee anywhere, can you? So that's it. That's we've done a lot today, haven't we? So not going to Paris next week. I guess that's the rugby, isn't it? No, I did see there were still tickets available for Wales Island, and I don't know if I can put myself through it this year. But yeah, let's see. Let's see what happens. Watching through clenched fingers, I think. Clenched, yeah, this week. Right, that's it. We'll wrap it up there. Really interesting week in the end, I thought, this week. So let's see what happens next week. If you don't want to try the WhatsApp group and get access to that, it is a really good webinar. You know, I do know what I'm talking about. I practice what I preach. I'm not one of these lunatics who say you're going to make 20% a month standing on your head. You know, but the idea is to crunch out a profit every year. That's my approach. All covered in the webinar. You join the WhatsApp group. You can have the WhatsApp group for a month. Have a look at who I trade with. There's a really good video I'm going to put on YouTube tomorrow, and it's another one of these series. I did one last week with my old work colleague, Will Hardy. Why are traders still losing? So Will has been in trading for about 35 years. Tomorrow's video that will go live on the channel, I think it's 1 o'clock tomorrow, is it in your broker's interest if you lose money? Yeah? Popular conspiracy theory, or is it a conspiracy theory, that brokers make money if you lose money. So if you're a poor trader, is your broker laughing all the way to the bank? Will has been working in the brokerage industry for about 25 years. So we're going to blow the lid on that tomorrow. So there we go. We're going to talk about that tomorrow. So that'll be interesting to talk about that tomorrow. So have a look at that video. Subscribe if you're not subscribed. All the usual. Otherwise, we'll wrap it up there. Good day today. And yeah, let's see how everything looks next week. Any questions, you can always drop me an email. Always happy to answer emails. dj@davidjonestrading.co.uk. Good luck with your trading. Interest rates on Wednesday. That would be a big one. Let's see where it all is next Friday. And have a good week.